The Bones and Bobbins podcast is now on Patreon!
Yay!
Would you like access to bonus episodes, digital extras, exclusive merch, and more? And join us in the Curiosity Shop at patreon.com/Bones and Bobbins.
Your generous support helps make the show happen and will also earn you our very eternal gratitude and entry into our private Patreon-only Facebook group, which is a lovely, lovely place to be.
It is one of my absolute favorite corners of the internet. I just have to say it. It's delightful. There's no pressure. There's no drama. If you have insomnia and you stumble across a TikTok where somebody is doing something they abso-fucking-lutely should not be doing and you need to share it with somebody,
like opening a sarcophagus found in the or under Notre Dame. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
I'm sorry, no.
Look at this ancient book sealed with wax we pulled from the attic that we just purchased. There's a creepy doll in the corner staring at us with one eye still blinking.
Uh-oh.
Don't open it.
Uh-uh.
But yeah, you can share all kinds of stuff like that. You can also just say hi
or
and be like, hi, this is my cat. Or if you do open it,
you can also tell us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we'll judge for like 30 seconds, but I mean, really, we'd probably do the same.
We would absolutely do the same. Let's be honest.
So do it. Join us. It's lovely.
It is. In a dusty old shop on a forgotten old street, you'll find two witches with books 3 boxes deep. Next to rusty old needles and faded red thread, you'll come in for yarn, but leave with pigments instead. Whether poisons or patterns, we're always discreet, where creepy and crafty and morbidity meet. Welcome to the Bones and Bobbins podcast. Hello, morbid makers. We are your slightly creepy,
mildly disconcerting,
somewhat sinister,
delightfully discomposed,
opaquely odd,
merrily morbid,
marvelously misanthropic hosts.
And this is Bones and Bobbins, Season 3, Episode 7, Urban Spelunking We Will Go.
Spelunking we will go. Oh, no. Wait, that's what, Snow White?
Yep.
I look just like that person.
Hey, I got called that by an Alzheimer's lady on repeated occasions.
Oh.
And my children thought it was delightful. Because
I think it's delightful, too.
Hey, it's Snow White. And I would giggle. And be like, yes, I am very pale.
My mom once bought me the Disney Store official costume.
Ooh.
And I was fucking delighted.
That's great.
Yeah, it's probably still in my basement. At my mom's house. So my mom's basement. Since I haven't lived there in, like, more than 20 years. But, you know, whatever. Yeah, so I'm Haley from Red Handled Scissors and the Very Serious Crafts podcast, and I go by she and her.
And I'm Natalie from Uber Dark Designs, an official true crime creative, and my pronouns are she and her.
Huzzah!
Yay!
Oh my goodness. Oh no, frog voice. Ah!
It's par for the course.
Tell me how you are.
I was like, I'm feeling some energy. I'm doing pretty good. I'm getting back. I just poke out of my blanket fort to spend some Easter with the rents, and especially so they can take, red room photos for you.
Which were amazing. Oh no. See? So amazing they took my breath away.
And then I ended up on more antibiotics and had like 2 days worth of fever dreams.
Ooh.
Wherein my favorite was Snoop was a fan of our podcast, and him and I were besties. And yeah. I'll hang with that. Like, I'm good with that.
Oh no, it's 420. I was totally gonna celebrate before recording the podcast. But it's probably for the best that I did.
But that, and also, now Knowing you, you most likely did not watch the show Fringe, correct?
Fringe or Friends?
Fringe.
No.
Okay, so it was like a sci-fi show. It had the kid that played Pacey in Dawson's Creek. I don't
know what that is either.
It was a really good series. And one of my favorite characters on there was Agent Astrid. Cute as a button, super brilliant, just fun, adore her. Mm-hmm. This actress also was on a few episodes of Scandal, and I think The Good Doctor as well. Her name is Jessica Nicole, and she is on TikTok.
Oh, yeah, I know who that is.
So her TikTok, she sews all of her own clothing.
Yeah, that's why I know who she is.
And it's de-fucking-lightful. Like, it's so cute. She even made her dad, like, a matching shirt to this, like, dress she made with, like, horse print on it.
Yeah.
I could not be more just delighted with it.
She's cool. She's really cool.
So it's like that sci-fi fun, like, fan maker intersection that just made me happy. So yeah, fever dreams and cool maker TikTok.
Sweet.
That's it. For the most part. Just a walking petri dish of germs, apparently.
You know what happens? It is that time of the season.
Oh, it is.
Yes, all of the trees in New York City are fucking.
Yep. Let's get it on.
Yeah. Like, it's full Barry White 24/7 here right now. So my frog voice is even worse than usual. But that's fine. Like, whatever. You all are used to me croaking around. I am leaving tomorrow for a giant life-changing thing that I'm not going to talk about until I'm back from it. But I know that I have at least kind of mentioned it in some bits and parts of previous episodes. So
I am so excited, and I'm so proud of you. And you did a lot of adulting, like serious adulting.
Oh, so fucking much adulting, and it will totally be worth it. But I have a tension headache that is as big as probably the whole Midwest at the moment.
So I think tomorrow night, to balance all out, you need to have ice cream for dinner.
Okay.
Because you did all that adulting, and now, the joy of being adult is you can have ice cream for whatever meal you want.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to have to wait until Friday night to have ice cream for dinner.
That's what I meant.
Because that tension headache isn't going to go away until Friday.
I meant that, but,
Yeah.
Anyway.
So to sort of mark the beginning of the next exciting phase of my life. By the way, I'm not having a baby. So
no
nobody,
babies.
No. That ship has sailed. But I decided to treat myself to a giant cool rock.
It is super cool.
Yeah. So I got this huge obsidian point, which is volcanic glass, if for people who are not into rocks and or crystals. And obsidian is this just beautiful, glossy, black volcanic glass. And the piece I got was struck directly by lightning.
Ooh.
And so it has these red streaks going through it that I'm not entirely sure. It's an inclusion of some sort of a different mineral, but I'm not sure what mineral it is. And then there's just all of these cracks and fissures that have, like, the moment they were created, they also filled in. And so it's not sharp. But you can see the entire, like, strike pattern on it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it is so fucking cool. And I got it from House Switch. And
I love House Switch.
Yeah, me too. And they had a collection of them. I am unclear how they managed to get an entire collection of pieces of obsidian that had been struck by lightning, but they did. I guess there must have been a lightning storm. I'm gonna go with on Hawaii or something. But they named them all after badass female musicians.
Oh, nice.
And so mine is named after Patti Smith. And nice. I am pretty delighted because obviously Patti Smith is spelled with an I. My mom, Patti, is spelled with an I. And I just like that combination of things. And like, rocks that have been hit by lightning are fucking cool.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, and I've been hit by lightning, and the rock has been hit by lightning, and I just feel really great about bringing sort of that energy of badassery onto my altar, especially when I'm, like, doing big, exciting, scary things.
Yes.
So
I like it.
Yeah, and now I want a lot more rocks of different varieties that have been struck by lightning. But I feel like since most of them are underground, that that's probably less likely. I don't know how often lightning hits like the side of a mountain.
I don't know. I know that I don't like a lot of really squishy romance movies. But one of them that I did like is Sweet Home Alabama, and in there, this guy, he sticks a lightning rod into sand.
That's really
and
cool.
Makes glass sculptures with it, and I was like, that's amazing. I'm like, I want to do that too. Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool. But, I don't need to be anywhere near rod.
Yeah.
Yep. Old Midwestern television antenna, metal, up in the air. That's why I got kissed by lightning. Anyway. So, yeah, I really want more rocks and more random objects that are interesting that have been struck by lightning, but that were not a danger to me or anyone else.
I shall keep my eyes open.
Yeah. So, I don't remember what I was going to say. Oh,
Yeah?
I think that we should do a little something before we move on.
A little quick break, maybe?
A little bit.
Mm-hmm. A little bit to thank all of our fantastic Curiosity Shop members over on Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
If you join us today, we'll give you a totally normal and not at all creepy welcome, like right about here in the show.
It's true. That really happens.
It does.
Yeah. And then we know your name, and then we can hang out on the Facebook group. It'll be great. You can experience my insomnia. It's exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so everybody who is already with us, and also everyone who has access to all of the bonus episodes that are only available through Patreon.
Like a huge backlog.
Yeah, almost 50 additional episodes at this point. So
join
patrons
us
who have made that happen. You're the best, and we would totally go explore hidden old graveyards in the woods with you, but not without bug spray.
Exactly, and no lightning rods.
No. I am already a statistical anomaly. when we were coming up with our plan for topic ideas for upcoming episodes, I had recently gotten really into urban exploration videos on YouTube because I have an anxiety disorder that often exists by way of insomnia, or that is how it expresses itself. And there's something really soothing to me about watching dudes, generally speaking, with hot European accents wandering through beautiful, abandoned old shit that is really soothing to me.
Valid.
Yeah. And I mean, it isn't all obviously Europe-based. One of my favorite channels is also US-based. But I really enjoy it. And especially since the start of the pandemic, it seems like a lot more people, because they haven't been able to travel, have been partaking in a lot more in-depth local exploration. And so this had become so common that in July of 2020, the New York Times dedicated an entire article to urban explorers and how they were breathing new life into old ruins, which I like the idea of, because that is, like, there's this nice sort of almost bittersweet mixture of morbid curiosity and awe and appreciation of craftsmanship, and also the adrenaline of maybe this might kill you.
Right.
That is all mixed together, and also you're not supposed to be there.
Right. It's kind of creepy, and there's history, and you get to figure out the history and investigate it.
Exactly. And there are a lot of, like, there's a pretty big intersection of, or between urban explorers and ghost hunters. Like, that Venn diagram isn't a circle, but it's close.
It is.
And I just find it to be really interesting. And I also find the entire idea of urban exploration and the people who do it to be fascinating, because even though most of the time the people who are doing the exploration do not have permission to be where they are. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they do, but usually they don't, and largely because the insurance risk for the owner would be astronomical. So there's a code of ethics that goes along with a lot of this that I find really fascinating, and I also kind of agree with in the specific area of things that have obviously been abandoned. Mm-hmm. And it's, generally speaking, people, at least the people I respect who do this, don't break and enter. They only enter if there is already a way in. So if a door is unlocked, if a window is open, if someone has already broken in. There are really specific sort of ethical standards around how one can enter a building.
Well, ultimately, I think do no harm is important.
Yeah. And again, with the YouTube channels that are my favorite for this, there is a deep respect of the history of a location and a lot of avoidance specifically of doing any damage or changing anything. Mm. And so, while things may be picked up just to show the camera, they are generally speaking not, like, they're never removed.
I heard, when I was researching, I can't remember the first part of it. I want to say it's like architectural hacking. Like, they're there to learn and to document, but not to steal.
Yeah,
like,
it's
the same, like, white hat hacker theory in terms of, that.
Yeah, and so it's an interesting intersection of sort of ethics and curiosity, where no, they are not supposed to be breaking in. They aren't technically breaking and entering. And more often than not, at least with the channels that I watch that are very popular, they are also, generally speaking, young white men who are not very likely to be arrested, and they're not very likely to have real consequences other than safety-related consequences.
Yeah, they're rocking a lot of privilege.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of privilege that goes with that. But, hold on just a second. My computer's like, nah, I'm not going to show you your notes. You cannot have them. And I'm like, bitch, I need those. And it does not care. It does not care. All right, there we go. All right, so if you aren't like a fan of urban exploration and you're listening to this and you haven't seen any of these videos, two of the YouTube channels that I especially like, because it's clearly people who are not intending to do harm, are The Proper People, which is generally speaking US based, although they have some that are in China. And
okay.
I have not watched
That's
the
gotta
China
get tricky.
ones, but like, how did you get permission to do that?
Right, that has to be real tricky.
Because you would have had to have gotten permission. But anyway, I don't know. I haven't watched those particular videos, but like, they do, like, you know, the indoor water park fad that was happening in the early 2000s. They go to one of those that is abandoned, like a 1920s store that still has all of the fixtures in place.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so they find a lot of really neat things and a lot of pieces of history that in their original context. So things that you wouldn't necessarily look at and be like, oh, I recognize what that does. Mm-hmm. But in its original context, you do know what that does, and that history isn't lost.
I love that.
Yeah, so I think that's really cool. And I also like Bros of Decay. And they're usually in Europe. And hot guy, hot accent. Highly recommend. But we're talking like 17th century castles in France.
Ooh,
and
yes.
Like, just really cool, like, Italian villas and like truly historic places that simply don't exist in the United States.
Yeah.
And the kind of old money opulence that doesn't truly exist in the United States either. There's a it's amazing how some of these buildings from like the 1600s, 1700s, the built-in features are often still functional.
Wow.
And because they were built to do what they do, where they were, and within the environment that they were in. And so I think that's really cool. Mm-hmm. And I believe this same channel also explored some homes that were built into boulders that were really, really cool. I think that was in England. That'd be
pretty fun.
Yeah, so all of those channels are really, really fun. And once you get started watching them, the YouTube algorithm is great at being like, oh, you want to see more chateaus? And you're like, yes, I do, please.
I think I'm going to have a date with the bros tonight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think you should. So, yeah, it's just really a neat community, an interesting set of internal ethics and internal regulation. Mm-hmm. And also, it's just, like, you get to see things you would never get to see.
Right.
And when you're watching it with talented videographers who are pros at doing the kind of exploration they do, who are truly interested in the discovery of neat things in situ, mm-hmm. It's just fantastic. And so that sort of foray into urban exploration also got me started down the path of thinking, oh man, like, there are some really, really amazing things that are perfectly usable. Mm-hmm. They're just sitting there.
Yep.
And it would be wrong to take them. Like, absolutely not at all fine. But there are ways to do that. I mean, not to take the things from the places you explore, but there are ways to actually get your hands on items from places like that have been torn down or have been condemned things like that. And so it reminded me of watching an episode of This Old House, which is my favorite PBS show. I literally have a Tommy bobblehead. Yeah.
Nice.
And I have a Silva Brothers t-shirt. It's a whole thing. And so they, in one of their seasons, took a trip to an architectural salvage. And I think that was the first time I had ever heard of that idea as a specific thing. Not just like wandering around the antique mall and finding something cool, but specifically a dedicated place for stained glass windows that have been removed from houses that were being torn down, banisters for ridiculous staircases, like doors, really, like, the details that make old houses and old buildings so fascinating and so rich in, like, both artistry and, I mean, frankly, expense.
Yeah.
Those things are saved often, and they can be. So you can find, like, original plaster medallions for ceilings. You can find tin ceilings. You can find a whole bunch of things that you wouldn't necessarily think, to recycle, but
there's Habitat for Humanity has opened a series of stores called Restore, where people do that very thing.
Do they? That's cool.
When they remodel or rebuild or whatever, they salvage all of the bits and they donate it to the Restore, and then the selling of that and everything goes to fund houses through the Habitat for Humanity.
Oh,
and
that's
you
cool.
can find some amazing things. We stopped at one when we first moved, and the girls picked out a bunch of tiles and did artwork with them. Like, there's, but you could find some really incredible things, and they're all over the place. And I've seen some, like, just even like furniture and built things that were built in. Like curios and stuff that were pulled out. Funny side note: number one, I love Norm. Number two, I have talked to Bob Vila.
Yes.
I worked for an ad agency, and we were doing a commercial for the casino that was adding on. Mm-hmm. And we wrote the script, and we thought it'd be cool to have Bob Vila, because it's like this old casino, and they're building the casino. And
I mean, obviously.
Right. He was so condescending and gave me a huge lecture about how basically all gamblers were going to hell. And I was like, dude, number one, I'm going to tell my dad and he's not going to watch you anymore. And number two, like, you didn't need to give me a lecture. Like, I just wanted to know if you wanted to do this commercial or not. But yeah, so that was my brush with Bob Vila.
Well, fortunately, Bob Vila has not been on This Old House since, I think, the late 70s.
Yeah, I know, but...
So, luckily you can largely avoid him. But he does... I mean, I'm sorry to hear that he's kind of a dick.
But it's not surprising.
Yeah, I'm not terribly surprised. Yeah. But, yes, I love This Old House in, like, enough that for our anniversary, my husband and I watch This Old House marathons. Like,
that is amazing.
I have been a This Old House insider since that started, and so I give them money because I just really like them.
I have two memories growing up TV-wise when I was really little, and that was watching This Old House with my dad and watching Julia Childs with my mom. Both of them on PBS, of course. It's just that it sticks with me, that nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely. So This Old House has, I mean, probably for more than one episode, gone to architectural salvage, especially when trying to restore historic homes that are pretty far gone. And I just, like, it opened my eyes to a whole world of, this is very specific antiquing. This is, like, next level. You are a nerd antiquing. And so I was trying to figure out which episode it was that I was thinking of, and I did not figure that out. But I did find the This Old House guide to buying items, specifically architectural features. That's apparently what it's called when you buy these things.
That sounds fancy,
doesn't it? There's a guide on what to look for when you're buying different kinds of items. So they have information on interior doors, how to shop for them, how to measure, and like what parts to measure, and like things to avoid, things that can be fixed, things that can't be fixed, and what you should expect to pay. And I'm trying to see.
That's really handy.
Yeah, and I think this is a few years old, so it's probably a little bit more. But it's just really like a handy guide. And so there is also a guide to windows, especially stained glass windows.
Oh, yep.
And fireplace mantles, which are, I mean, when people think of fireplaces, I think they often don't realize that fireplaces, like the actual mantle and the surrounds of a fireplace, isn't part of the house.
Yeah.
Like, it can be separated from.
There's a new show on Discovery Plus. And, of course, visiting with my parents means we're watching all of the home shows.
Oh, of course.
And there's a new one called Living Through Renovation, where this couple, they buy this amazing Victorian, and they want to they're going to live in part of it, have an office, but then they're turning the 2 front parlors into, like, event spaces. And they have to redo these, the fireplaces, and they had this mason who had to come in to do them because it's much more complicated to actually restore the original fireplaces than people think it is. And I was fascinated. I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. If you have something that is not just straight up brick, then it is an entire deal. Like, all of it. It's a thing. And you can buy those. And they can be really large and really ornate, and you can design a whole house around them.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so it's really neat. And I think that guide is really helpful, and I've linked to it in the show notes. My favorite parts are obviously stained glass windows, but also old doors and old tubs.
Ooh,
like clawfoot standalone. Oh yes,
porcelain.
Yes, I really, really like them. So.
And doors can get tricky, especially when you're dealing with, like, pocket doors.
Oh, man. We have, in our current apartment, built-in pocket doors. And they work. And they are a finicky pain in the ass, but they sure are beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, anyway, I just think that it's really cool.
It's very cool.
Sometimes, like, contractors will sometimes have deals with architectural salvage firms, so they can basically do the whole like bargaining for the different items. Sometimes they're sold, sometimes they're donated, but it's a really nice way if you are going to redo a house to not waste the reusable elements that are there.
Right.
And so I think that is very neat. Also, my computer had stopped responding again, so
that's fine.
Hold that thought. I'm gonna reopen it.
I can imagine, like, here we have a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright homes. So I can imagine when you're taking on, like, an actual known architect, like, how that must be difficult. We also have a bunch that are done by his, like, proteges, and there's some that are, like, questionable as to whether they're his or proteges. I had a friend whose dad lived in one, and it was amazing. It was one of the students, but based on how individual it was and how into the environment that specific house is built for that specific environment that it lays in, I can imagine that it'd be really hard to find things or even to create a missing piece or something that would like retrofit into it.
Oh yeah, like it can be really, really difficult, and that's the cool thing. Like it's sort of like a treasure hunt. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. There are several guides that I came across. One is a regional guide to architectural salvages by state. So if you want to take that adventure, there are probably architectural salvage yards near you. And there are also, since I'm in New York City, there are a bunch of them upstate. I bet. And a bunch of them around Boston. Like, basically the colonial areas have old houses and have a lot of architectural salvage that has happened over the years. And so I just love that.
It's good that it hasn't been lost.
Yeah. I love that as preserving the past and also just not having things that don't need to be disposable be disposable.
Right. Yeah. It's also kind of mind-boggling to stand someplace that didn't have running water before or electricity, or like just to fully grasp how many lives and generations lived in that building that you're standing in. It's pretty powerful.
It's really powerful. And you know what it also might be?
Haunted?
It might be haunted.
Yes.
So, of course, I was going down the, there's a salvage yard here. Ooh, there's a place I could go here rabbit hole. I also came across some hauntings that are in antique stores, but like on a much larger scale than I would normally think of, like the single, like many different booth antique malls. Like these remind me more of architectural salvage yards. And there's one in Salt Lake City called Euro Treasures.
Okay.
And apparently it's just extremely haunted. And the owner did a whole, like, it came out on Halloween of 2018.
Of course. Yes.
And did a whole interview with the local TV news and told very real, scary stories about things that had happened involving, first, an Egyptian death mask.
Oh!
Yep. And
give it
then
back!
A medium and a spirit that decided it was going to connect itself to the owner. A cleansing of the entire fucking store, which is just huge. Right. And then a ghost hunting crew came in.
Nice.
And
well, houses store energy, man.
Oh yeah. And that's basically, like, that sounds a bit over the top and like a publicity stunt, but the owner is just like, listen, these things have energy. They've all come from somewhere.
I keep thinking of how when you're on eBay, you see like this doll, and you're like, this doll, and it's like the history, and don't look at it, this, that, or the other. I want to see one of like some old ass doorknob that's like, this fucking doorknob, don't touch it.
Oh yeah. Well, there is a doll in this particular
there's always a doll
review. Yep. She has a funny name too. Black Leah. She is not black.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it is
I'm like, oof.
It is a very white porcelain doll. Okay. So it is not problematic in the way that you might be expecting. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said it. But it is a very creepy doll. But it apparently informed the medium that it needed to be made more comfortable. And so and now it's like in its own baby carriage, and the ghost hunters were talking to it. Like, it was a whole thing. And so I just kind of love the idea of someone who owns an antique store just being like, yup,
yeah,
there's some creepy shit in here, and telling the stories about it. And I found a few of those, some with actual security video surveillance and such. And so I've linked those in the show notes because, honestly, the people who are telling their story tell it better than I would. And so it's just a little fun thing to, a bit of history to skip through if you like old houses and are in the mood.
I will be watching them all.
Yeah. So I think that is where I should leave it. Otherwise, it will go in like 50 new directions.
That's, it's funny because I started out, like, I went in with the general thought, and then I was like, ooh, and then things actually were a little more, turned out more interesting than I figured they'd be quicker. And then I was like, oh. So my favorite one I'm actually going to save for another episode. Even though we have moved out of the Milwaukee area, I still try to adamantly, like, support all of our favorite businesses. And for years now, we've been monthly supporters of 88.9 Radio Milwaukee. And there's so much to love about this station, which you can check out streaming online no matter where you live.
Huzzah.
Some of the DJs are amazing. Actually, all of them are. I don't even know why I said some. But one of my favorite things that they've been doing for years is a weekly segment called Urban Spelunking. And it's gotten so popular that you can now find the podcast version on the NPR site.
Oh, yeah. So I'm totally going there.
Right. So I've linked to it. And so they go through local buildings and break down their history. And some are, like, truly amazing. Some are abandoned. Some have been restored. You also get to see, like, sneak peek into some of those giant frickin' mansions that you drive past. And you're like, I wonder what it must be like inside. They actually go inside. And so much fun stuff. I might know something
about that soon.
Yay!
Just saying.
So I decided to pull a couple items from their catalog. And I was going to do one of my favorite abandoned-ish Milwaukee landmarks. But, ish. Part of it is abandoned. Part of it is not. But I'll save that one.
Okay.
So first up, we got a story about a dad, Chris Dwyer, and his daughter. They were out for a walk in Washington Heights area, which is part of Milwaukee, and I love the Washington Heights area. So while
have one of those areas.
Yes. So while strolling along Washington Boulevard between 53rd and 54th Street, they spotted a strange metal hatch. And it's strange in, like, the best of ways. Now, if I looked at that, and I didn't upload the photos yet, but I will. There's so many things it could be. Like, it's not manhole cover hatch. We're talking, it is strange. And clearly, Chris is one of us, because he absolutely cracked that shit open and took a peek. So, the inside top of the large rectangular metal hatch has 2 banks of glass block. Most of them are, like, broken out. Some are patched with cement. So at some point, they were clearly, like, a vault light meant to serve as a light source for what lays below. And it led to a cement staircase.
Huh.
At the bottom of this staircase was a toilet. complete with a roll of toilet paper. And that's the point, because he was like, you look down the stairs and there's literally just the frickin' toilet. And that's the point where he shut the hatch and he emailed the tip to Milwaukee.com's Bobby Tenzolo and let him take the trip down those stairs. So
I am so confused.
Right? So,
and also that's the perfect thing to put someplace if you want to put a trap door under a thing that nobody will mess with.
Right? So Bobby began to research. Clearly this wasn't for public use, because the hatch is somewhat awkwardly placed and pretty heavy. The glass block that was meant to let light in also pretty much indicated that it was meant to be used like only during daylight hours. So
somebody really, really, really wanted a place to shit.
Right? The room was actually pretty ample in size, estimating it to be about 8 by 13 with roughly 8-foot high ceiling. Was it part of a bigger something that what was? This is actually like something that would make the hell of a writing prompt. But the actual answer is kind of simple. So, according to Jeff Polinsky, the City of Milwaukee's Commissioner of Public Works, after a little investigating, I came to find that back some time ago, when there were a higher level of annual landscaping maintained along this boulevard, there was gardening staff that spent more time at this site taking care of it all. In an effort to accommodate the maintenance operations, an underground gardener shed was constructed within the boulevard. So it's literally like in the boulevard. So how long ago exactly is a little more tricky. It's not noted on the 1927 map, but the trapdoors are noted on a 1938 sewer plan, which was obtained with the aid of Milwaukee Central Drafting and Records Manager Yance Marty, because the toilet chamber sits right above a 12-inch sewer.
Well, that makes sense.
The toilet is not shown on the sewer plans. Our staff believe that this gardening staff at some point may have modified the underground facility with the toilet so as not to annoy adjacent residents by having to ask them to use their bathrooms during the day. Polinsky said that not only is the department's forestry staff, which maintains the city boulevard medians, aware of the underground room, they still use it to some extent. To what extent, I'm not sure, because it doesn't look like it's being used. The boards that appeared to have once been shelving are rotted, while the petrified, pristine roll of TP remains intact. The toilet is no longer functioning. However, I have to say that the toilet is actually in better condition than a lot of gas station toilets I've seen in my life. I'm just saying. And it appears as though it's not the only one of its kind. There is at least one other underground shed in the median at 51st and Wisconsin Avenue. They're pretty much identical. Same layout, same 2-part trapdoor, same vault lights. The toilets are located in the same spot, which cracks me up because they're literally right in front of the fucking staircase. Just walk down and they're dropping a deuce. I mean, if that's the only place to put it, then maybe, I don't know, I guess you'd hear that hatch opening and know that you had, like, a certain amount of seconds to get what you needed to done. The one on Wisconsin Avenue, though, has another door at the bottom of the staircase, as well as a bit of graffiti, which looks fairly odd. The phone numbers that are listed for City Hall and the Forestry Department are still on there, and they use the old, like, alphanumeric exchanges.
Oh.
And there's one cryptic note that reads, paper, 42160. And this one also has toilet paper, so maybe perhaps that was last changed almost exactly 62 years ago?
Oh.
To the day.
Fascinating.
Right? So, again, each appear have these makeshift storage benches, which are kind of decayed, made with planks and bricks. It looks like not so much for sitting, but keeping stuff off the floor. Mm-hmm. And there are also boards on the walls with nails on for hanging tours. tools. The Washington Boulevard bunker has 2 stacked civil defense water barrels that are now empty and a small ladder. Otherwise, there's not much inside, apart from, like, you know, a few leaves and bottles and cans.
But so that one sounds like it was probably retrofitted during World War II.
Well, they're both built like literal bomb shelters with like super thick poured concrete.
You have to if you were going to be
right
in a boulevard.
2 very long tenured forest department employees that were asked knew of the underground specs, but again, neither of them had ever been inside. Maintenance crew eventually became seasonal, and there was an increase of people who would drive to work rather than just get dropped off. And eventually the city got vehicles, so that may explain why they no longer need the shed there to, like, centrally store the things.
Oh, yeah.
But I still think it's kind of fun and really weird.
Fun. And also, like, if you know about it and you could go see it, and it could have been totally fine for you to go see it, and you didn't go see it, like, what are you even doing?
Right? The next one took me for a doozy. It started with an outdoor horse fountain. So once upon a time, there was like 20...
Did you say outdoor horse fountain?
Yep. 20 big cement trough fountains located around the city for people to water their horses at. Think equine bubblers. Because, you know, Wisconsin. And horses got a drink. I don't believe that any of the other 19 remain, but the one that does is actually a monument now and a pet cemetery of sorts.
Huh.
So, installed in 1910, it is roughly 1618 South 16th Street. So there's this, like, small triangle where Bow Street, Pearl Street, and Cesar Chavez Drive all kind of cross. Is the Richard D. Whitehead Monument, which has been a neighborhood landmark for 110 years now.
Wow.
On it is a depiction of George the horse and Dandy the dog, along with the following etched into the cement. Erected by R.D. Whitehead. Supt, which I found is short for superintendent, the Badger State Humane Society, in remembrance of my faithful friends, Horse George, Dogs Jim, Flora, Dandy, Pet, Punch, Judy, and Shorty, Cats Frank and Henry, Birds Brownie and Dick. So, who was R.D. Whitehead?
I mean, apparently the superintendent of the Humane Society.
But before that, he was born on a farm in Newark, Ohio in 1932. He moved to Chicago as a young man to work in stables. And after Henry Bergh founded the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in New York in 1866, which blew my mind, humane societies started popping up in major cities. By 1879, he became interested in the work of the Chicago location. And not long after he joined there, the directors of the newly formed Wisconsin Humane Society, according to the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, at the time it was just Milwaukee Sentinel, prevailed upon Whitehead to come to Milwaukee and assume charge of the work of the Wisconsin Humane Society. His pay was to be, according to a history of the Humane Society, not more than $1,000 plus the expense of one horse. And he was given police powers so that he could make arrests, though that was something that he was expected to only do as, like, a last resort.
I kind of like that,
right?
Like, there was actually enforcement power behind behind stopping cruelty to animals. Like,
it gets crazy. The history of the Humane Society also notes the earnestness and aggressiveness with which the warm-hearted Whitehead carried out his duties were soon noted by the board. Now, initially, I was a little confuzzled because I kept thinking of things in terms of, like, the modern Humane Society, of which I have adopted many a pet from. Yeah. But this shit was much more wild Midwest. These streets were packed full of horses, And city life still meant, like, copious numbers of chickens and pigs and other animals, as well as cats and dogs, just, like, running around. While he met no open opposition, the Sentinel wrote upon his death in 1911, the support given him was not sufficient to carry out the work as he wished. During the first years, he was obliged to work almost entirely alone, organizing and systematizing, that's a hard word, matters not only
you did it
in the city, but throughout the state. As the years passed, his eagerness and aggressiveness, together with many good results shown for his efforts, interested many of the philanthropic people of the city, and the society became more stable and better able to carry out its plans. After the death of his wife Cynthia in 1905, and some complaints by those who were the cause of suffering for what they called his unnecessary meddling, Whitehead split from the Wisconsin Humane Society, which declared that the accusations against him were baseless. So in 1906, he then went on to found the Badger State Humane Society, and he worked tirelessly to again, according to Humane Society history, to provide means for the prevention of cruelty to animals, children, women, aged, dependent people, and criminals of the state, and to cooperate with other humane agencies.
What?
Wait, what? Yeah. Uh-huh. Right? I was like, the what?
That
not just
is
a cat?
An interestingly broad swath of...
But at that time, there was no Department of, like, Health and Family Services. So the newspapers would report, like, the day updates, they list monthly updates. Like, quote, the Society's report says that in September, 45 persons were assisted, 200 animals were relieved, 25 dogs and cats were given homes, and 100 crates of poultry were examined. And 45 people and 210 horses were given relief by the Badger State Humane Society during February. Owners of horses are urged to prevent their animals from coming into contact with salt used for snow melting. So, he also apparently is known for his crusade to end cockfighting in the city.
Good for him.
Right? And it was apparently not unusual for reports that he had been given infants as young as months old by mothers unable to provide care by folks who found babies abandoned on their doorstep, that he was making the children available for adoption.
Well, somebody...
Right?
Yeah, he seems like he was responsible and good-hearted.
Right? So he was absolutely respected. And a lot of times the newspaper would, like, men would call him for comment after, like, heinous crimes and, like, other incidents, because he was also super outspoken. Yeah. But because he was super outspoken, he also, like, drew criticism. Like, in 1908, when the former governor George Peck publicly chided Whitehead for calling President Theodore Roosevelt a coward for indulging in the hunt. I was
fascinating.
So part of Whitehead's work was in the construction of the drinking fountains that we mentioned around the city for horses. And at least 29 such amenities. Some of them were organized under the Badger State Humane Society and paid for by public donations, but even more of them were actually the work of Whitehead and, like, Whitehead alone.
Wow.
And he wrote in July 1910 to the Sentinel regarding the Bow Street Fountain, which is now the last remaining horse trough in the city. I noticed in the Evening Journal that the Badger State Humane Society is erecting a fountain on the south side, wrote Whitehead. That is not so. I am erecting a fountain, dedicating it to my animals with my own money to cost me something over $2,000. I have, with the help of the citizens, erected 19 drinking fountains for animals, paid for them with my own certified check, and then begged the money from the citizens to cover all the expense. The Berg Fountain with the Humane fountain the Wisconsin Humane Society had nothing to do with, except for one of the board, a lady, nor would they have anything to do with it until the money was all subscribed, collected, and in the bank. The lot at this fountain that I am erecting, I tried to buy several years ago to bury pet animals, but did not succeed. The city now owns it and has given it to me to erect this fountain, and monument the society has nothing to do with. The Berg Fountain, incidentally, that Whitehead references is a statue with a fountain at the base that's was at one point in front of City Hall in 1891, and now it stands outside the Wisconsin Humane Society on Wisconsin Avenue, and it was paid for by $14,000 raised from public donations. But according to an article in the Sentinel, on the occasion of the unveiling of the Bow Street Fountain, the paper notes that the watering facility will be a monument to Whitehead's departed pets who were to be buried beneath it, and he did indeed bury them. They were originally all buried in white oak coffins. He exhumed all of the white oak coffins and moved them to the site.
Oh, yuck. But also,
And that's how Milwaukee ended up with a weird little pet cemetery on the south side.
Wow.
And I did not realize all of that. I know that was a real quick whip through, but that was a lot. I was like, oh, okay, so guy worked for Humane Society, bills us, buries his pets, but I'm like, wait, there's adoptions and animals running amok and corruption and all this stuff.
Wow.
Right?
That's... wow.
A lot.
Huh.
So yeah. Fucking urban
That's cool.
spelunking. I love it. I would never have learned that. You know what I mean? It just...
No, I love stuff like that. That
Right.
is the kind of history I want to hear about.
And it needs to, like, go on. You know what I mean? Like, stories like that need to be carried on. Because that is an incredible amount of humanitarian work for one human being to take on and not expect shit in return. I mean, the nobility involved in, I'm guessing, the sacrifice. I don't know that him and his wife had kids. It doesn't sound like they did. But I could be wrong. But just to, I mean, yeah, that's a lot.
Wow.
That's a lot to take on.
It really is, but I guess no one else was taking it on.
Right. Good on him.
So he did.
Yeah.
Wow.
I want a bird named Dick now.
Yeah, me too. Yes.
It's inevitable. Even though birds scare me.
Can it be a corvid?
Oh, of
Let's
course.
just wait until we make friends with a corvid and then we can name it Dick.
There we go.
Okay.
So, hey, you know what that brings us to?
What? Oh.
Weekly worst way to die. What's yours?
All right. Rotted floorboards.
Yep. Yeah. That.
Full stop.
Full stop. That picture money pit right there. Me on an underground toilet bunker. I don't know how. It just.
I feel like that could go one of two ways. I mean, at least you've got a toilet in your bunker?
Yeah.
At least you've got a bunker?
Right, but what if you get stuck in the bunker? And somebody comes
At
down
least
there.
you've got a toilet in the bunker? I don't know. I'm looking for the bright side. Come on. Oh, man.
So, do you want to be spooky internet friends?
Uh-huh.
You could find us on all of the social medias, including Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of them. You name them. Hunt us down at Bones and Bobbins, or just pop on mybonesandbobbins.com.
Yeah, it's true. And don't forget to rate and review this podcast, because it pleases the internet gremlins, and that's how we show up in recommendations so that other morbid souls can find us.
Indeed. Bring forth the morbid souls.
Yes, do it now.
And on that note, let us leave you with some advice that you should never forget.
Mm-hmm.
Lock your doors.
And don't run with scissors.
Especially up old cement stairs away from a toilet bunker.
Better than running toward the toilet.
That's true.
All right. Goodbye, friends.
Bye. Each episode of the Bones and Bobbins podcast is written and researched by Haley Pierson-Cox and Natalie Hoyce. Our music was composed by Loyalty Freak Music. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bones and Bobbins. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, or check us out wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts so you won't miss a minute of our strange and creepy content.